Well, hello again, sports fans. This is a flight I had yesterday with the Ranger. Unfortunately, the Mobius camera didn't survive the flight, so the only footage I have is the transmitted video from the DVR. This is Nick, who's visiting us from New Zealand and has kindly offered to toss me off today. The last time we provided this service, the launch went well, but the Ranger refused to perform as it should, and I was having a lot of trouble gaining altitude. I've had a couple of successful flights since then, so I think the problem was that I just hadn't initiated the flight controller properly. I climbed to about 80 metres and slip it into loiter mode while I wait for Nick to get his FX61 in the air. The plan is for Nick to head off in a north-northeasterly direction with me following and hopefully getting some aerial footage of him. We've had a couple of failed attempts at this in the last couple of days, but Nick's been working hard overnight on it and assures me he's got all the bugs ironed out now. It looks like he's ready to go. He's wandering out onto the strip. So I slipped the Ranger into PA mode and swing around to see if I can capture the takeoff. I signal him when I've got him in my sights, and he fires up and lets it go. I'm having a fair bit of trouble keeping the FX61 in sight. It's a very overcast day and the universally bright sky isn't doing the camera light handling any favours at all. I lose sight of Nick not very long after he takes off, so I just keep heading in that north-northeasterly direction in the hope that I'll pick him up when he gains a bit more altitude. But I don't have any luck at all. And Nick decides he might as well turn around and come back and see if we can restart. I spotted the turn on the video, but I didn't see anything on the monitor at the time, and just kept flying for a little way and then turned around. I'm looking around for him and I gain a bit of altitude to get a broader perspective, but the picture on the monitor is really quite dim and I just don't see hide and hair of him at all. So we're talking to each other and trying to use landmarks to explain where we are in the hopes that we can get together, but we're not doing a very good job of it. So I decide to fly out a bit further and turn around in the hope that I can see him against the open fields rather than the trees. But I don't have any luck with that either. We eventually figure out that the only common landmark we have is the strip in front of us. So Nick decides to just do circuits and fly down the strip, and I try and do the same. Once again, while I was editing the video, I noticed that the FX61 actually does appear on this run, even though I couldn't see it in the monitor. He is a long way ahead of me though. So I just continue to do a circuit which proceeds down the strip and then turns left when I hit the creek at the end of the strip. Follow that around and then do another left towards Mount Tennant. About this point Nick mentions that he's flying down the strip again, so I cut the corner and turn back towards the strip and see if I can pick him up there. And lo and behold, when I line up on the strip, I do spot a tiny white dot moving across the monitor and do my best to keep it in shot and try and catch up. It's not too bad while he's against a dark background, but once he goes up near the skyline it gets very, very difficult, and I'm really struggling to keep up with him. I haven't quite lost him yet though, so I stay on his tail for a little while, but then he goes back above the skyline and I lose him altogether. So I turn back towards the strip thinking I might actually now be in front of him, and I expect to see him come whizzing by, but it just doesn't happen. I'm down to about 40 kilometres an hour at this stage, so I'm wondering where he is. Now that I'm looking at the video, I can see that he was actually well in front of me. You can just see him passing across the front of the hill there in the distance. So I just continue on with my circuit and wait for Nick to tell me that he's coming down the strip again. I can't actually hear him because Nick actually has audio on his base station, and I'm getting confused by the engine noise coming from that and the engine noise in the sky. When he eventually tells me he's going back down the strip again, I once again cut the corner in the hopes of catching him before he disappears, and I actually do this time, but I overfly him. I maintain the same course and slow down, hoping that he'll pass beneath me and reappear in front, but he actually doesn't, so I'm not sure where he's gone at this time, so I just continue with the circuit. The video shows he was actually down on my left, but I didn't see that at the time. But just a couple of seconds later I got a really good view when he went flashing across the front of the Ranger. He was gone so fast that I didn't even bother trying to follow him. I just kept on with the circuit and thought that at least I'd have one good shot of the FX61. I still have no idea where he actually is at the moment, but as I continue the circuit and straighten up on the strip, he comes flashing past on the left again, so it looks like I may have become the hunted. Once again, I don't even bother trying to follow him, I just continue on with the circuit. But for the next little while I don't see hide nor hair of him again, and so I've just speeded up this section of the video. So the original flight plan's clearly not working, and as Nick's only got the one battery pack he can use, he decides to go off for a fly towards the south just for a bit of an explore, and he thinks he'll probably follow the main road just in case he gets into trouble. I decide I'll head along after him, and whatever happens happens. I might get some video or I might not. So I'm just travelling at a fairly slow cruise, roughly following the road, but taking a look either side just to see if I can see Nick moving across the sky, but it's pretty hopeless. I figure he must be a fair way in front of me if he's pushed the throttle forward on his 4S powered beast. I'm paying fairly close attention to my battery voltage and consumption, because the last few flights I've had, I've run the battery down well before I thought I would. I've installed a brand new battery for today's flight, and so far I'm really happy with the voltage. It seems to be higher than it previously has, and everything's looking okay at this point. Unfortunately, it just doesn't last. I get to about 1400 metres from home and disaster suddenly strikes. I tried pulling up and pushing down, but nothing seemed to make any difference to the dive at all. Looking at the video, the only thing you can notice that's in any way unusual is that the RSSI suddenly drops to nothing. Surprisingly though, it doesn't look like the Failsafe has kicked in and switched the model into return to home mode as it's programmed to do when it loses signal. Nick, of course, is concentrating on his own flight and hasn't noticed that I've gone down, so I'll wait till he gets back from what appears to have been a successful mission. And we pack up, jump in the Land Rover and go off for what turns out to be about a 2-hour walk through the bush. When we found the Ranger, it wasn't in too bad a state, although the vertical stabiliser was completely knocked off but undamaged, so that's another possible cause for the tailspin. The lens on the Mobius was completely smashed, so it looks like the Ranger maintained its nose down attitude all the way to the ground. The camera is no longer working and the SD card was empty, so it looks like the impact has interrupted the recording. So it looks like, once again, I'm not going to know what actually happened unless Nick happened to be in the vicinity and caught it on his video camera at the time. I haven't been able to bring myself to plug the Ranger back in and try and work out what's gone wrong, but at this point I'm thinking it's probably the UHF receiver that's the problem. Though I am curious about the apparently undamaged vertical stabiliser that was still hanging onto the plane by the control rod.